Black CEO humiliated by billionaire's family. Moments later, their empire crumbled. Hello everyone, before we begin today's video, I need your help. We've noticed that the channel is losing traction and subscribing is one of the best ways you can help us. It's quick, free, and allows us to continue bringing you great content. Your support means everything. Let's keep this channel growing collectively. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now let's get back to the story. Young lady, this area is for guests only. The voice sliced through the chatter like glass cracking under pressure. Every head in the Langford gallery turned. Silver chandeliers, champagne flutes, whispered names worth billions, and in the center of it all stood a woman in a simple black dress, steady, unshaken. Dr. Naomi Ellis didn't flinch. She'd heard that tone before at 23, at 31, at every room where her presence was treated like intrusion. But tonight was different. Tonight she owned the silence that followed. Before we continue, where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. And if you believe in dignity and justice, hit like and subscribe. These stories spark change. And we're glad you're here. Now back to Naomi. The event was invitation. Only a private auction of rare art curated by the Langford family. They didn't recognize her. Of course they didn't. Preston Langford, the heir, eyed her like a misplaced shadow. Security, he muttered. We've had staff wandering in before. Naomi looked past him to the painting at the center of the gallery. The phoenix ascending a work she had quietly financed years ago. She smiled faintly. I remember when this was just sketches on paper, she said softly. Billionaire matriarch Eleanor Langford frowned. And who exactly are you to remember this piece? The question wasn't curiosity. It was dismissal dressed as etiquette. Naomi's answer was simple silence. A few feet away, a young black caterer lowered his tray, watching, frozen between fear and recognition. He'd seen her face before, somewhere online, somewhere important. But he stayed quiet. Not yet. Eleanor's tone sharpened. Please escort her out. We can't have people like... She stopped herself, but the words had already landed. The crowd shifted, discomfort pretending to be disinterest. A guard stepped forward. Naomi didn't move. The air thickened heavy with the arrogance of certainty. Cameras clicked, not from curiosity but from habit, documenting wealth, not justice. Naomi whispered almost to herself. Power always mistakes patience for weakness. No one heard her. Not yet. The guard's hand hovered near her arm. The chandeliers above trembled with the vibration of murmurs. She exhaled slowly, grounding herself in the rhythm of control. Because what they didn't know was simple. This auction, this building, this empire that mocked her presence, it was already hers. They just hadn't checked the paperwork. And when they did, the laughter would stop. When the guard reached for her arm, Naomi simply stepped aside. No resistance, no fear, just space. Cold, deliberate space. Preston Langford exhaled through his nose, half amused. You people really think you can walk into a private event and pretend you belong? Naomi tilted her head, her voice barely above a whisper. Pretend. The single word hung in the air longer than the music did. A ripple of discomfort spread across the gallery. A few guests turned away, pretending fascination with a sculpture they suddenly found interesting. The hum of polite laughter returned, brittle, anxious, hollow. Eleanor Langford clutched her glass tighter. Darling, just let security do their job. Her tone carried the easy cruelty of someone used to impunity. Naomi's eyes traced the chandelier overhead, its crystals swaying gently from the echo of her humiliation. The same light refracted across a framed article on the wall, Langford Holdings Partners with Ellis Global Capital. No one noticed. Not yet. She glanced toward the far corner. A young journalist badge half hidden under her jacket was already streaming live. The red dot blinked like a silent alarm. Naomi adjusted the strap of her clutch, her posture unshaken. The guard hesitated. Something in her stillness unnerved him. She smiled, calm and surgical. It's fine. I'll leave. Her tone wasn't surrender, it was setup. As she turned toward the exit, the gallery lights dimmed slightly, the automatic shift that signaled the start of the auction. The auctioneer's voice echoed from the front. Next piece, the phoenix ascending, starting at $10 million. Naomi paused mid-step. The painting shimmered beneath the spotlight, its wings stretched upward, ash turned gold. She remembered the first time she'd seen it 10 years ago, a bare studio, a young artist with trembling hands asking if anyone would believe in him. She did, quietly, completely. Now that same piece was being sold to the family that had just thrown her out. Her assistant's voice buzzed softly through the earpiece hidden behind her hair. Dr. Ellis confirmation received. Acquisition finalized. Langford assets officially transferred as of 7:45. Naomi's eyes narrowed. Timestamp it. Done. The timing was poetic. The auctioneer's gavel rose as the Langfords smiled for cameras, unaware they no longer owned the very company funding this event. Naomi turned back toward them, her steps slow measured, almost tender. Each heel strike echoed like a countdown. The security guard's voice broke the silence. "Ma'am, I'm going to need you to—" Naomi lifted her gaze. "You already did." And then she walked straight past him, not out the door but toward the stage. The auctioneer's voice echoed through the glass hall. 10 million, do I hear 11? Laughter rippled, the kind that smells like old money and polished arrogance. At the front, Eleanor Langford raised her paddle. 11. For the legacy of my family, she declared. Cameras flashed, perfectly timed. It was theater and she was the star. Naomi stood at the back, now half-shadowed by the marble arch. No spotlight, no attention. Yet every camera would find her soon enough. Her phone buzzed once. Protocol Phoenix active. She didn't smile. Not yet. The journalist who'd been streaming whispered into her mic, "Something's happening. Someone just triggered a private feed." Her viewers multiplied by the second. Naomi's eyes stayed on the stage. The gavel hovered. Going once, she stepped forward. Not rushed, not hesitant. Just presence. Silent, undeniable presence. The guard moved instinctively to block her path. She didn't stop walking. "I'm not here for a seat," she said softly. "I'm here for the truth." A murmur spread through the audience. Phones lifted discreetly. Preston Langford sneered. Security now. But the guard hesitated again. The same flicker of doubt, the same quiet fear of being wrong in front of 100 cameras. Naomi's assistant's voice came through her earpiece, crisp as a verdict. Public servers online. The acquisition announcement is live. Naomi's eyes didn't move. Let it stream. Behind her, the gallery's digital display flickered, the feed cutting from the auction lot list to a corporate banner. Breaking Ellis Global Capital acquires. Majority of Langford Holdings. Gasps hit the room like a gust of cold air. The journalist's live stream exploded. Wait, is that her? Is she Ellis? Eleanor's hand froze midair, paddle trembling. What is this? Naomi stepped onto the edge of the stage, steady as a metronome. "You wanted to buy the painting," she said quietly, "but you forgot who bought you." The words didn't echo, they detonated. A man in the front row whispered, "Oh my God." Another started clapping without meaning, to a reflex born of disbelief. Preston's face went pale. You tricked us." Naomi turned her head slowly. "No, I gave you time to notice." The chandelier above swayed again, its crystals scattering light like fragments of judgment. And in that fractured light, the Langford empire began to crumble, not with flames, but with silence. Naomi looked to the cameras, her tone level surgical. Justice doesn't shout. It simply arrives on schedule. The auctioneer's gavel, still raised mid-air, never came down. The room didn't breathe. Not the guests, not the staff, not even the cameras, all frozen between disbelief and dread. On the main screen, the breaking news ticker rolled across like a blade. Langford Holdings under new ownership, Ellis Global Capital completes acquisition. Every word carved away another piece of the family's illusion. Eleanor Langford's voice cracked first. This must be a mistake. But the microphones around the room caught it, her panic broadcast in real time to millions watching the live feed. Preston lunged toward the projector. "Turn it off." A technician shook his head. "It's not local, sir. It's the corporate server feed. It's coming from—" He hesitated, looked straight at Naomi. "Her company." The crowd erupted. Half disbelief, half thrill. Phones shot up flashes, strobing through the gallery like lightning before a storm. Naomi stayed still. Her silence was the loudest sound in the room. "Mrs. Langford," she said calmly, "Ellis Global will be auditing all active contracts, effective tonight." The older woman took a step forward, trembling with rage. "You staged this. You humiliated us." Naomi's gaze didn't waver. "No. You did that the moment you mistook grace for servitude." Someone in the audience whispered, "She warned them." Another murmured, "This is history." Reporters pushed forward, microphones thrust like weapons. "Doctor Ellis, did you plan this confrontation?" Naomi's eyes swept across the sea of faces. "No," she said. I plan transparency, the rest is just consequence. Preston slammed a fist against the podium. You can't do this, we're Langford Holdings. Naomi turned her head slightly. Were. The word landed like judgment, simple, irrefutable, final. From the side, a staff member in a headset whispered urgently into his mic. Confirming all Langford access credentials just went dark. Systems locked. His eyes darted toward the stage. It's real. Eleanor's pearls shook against her collarbone. How dare you, Naomi cut her off, gentle but absolute. I didn't take anything, Eleanor. I simply stopped pretending you owned it. Silence again. Then applause, hesitant then growing. Guests who had once looked away now nodded, clapped, even smiled. Justice had entered the room, not in sirens or shouting, but in order. Naomi turned toward the journalist who'd streamed it all. Make sure they see the truth, she said quietly. Not the spectacle. The truth. The reporter nodded almost reverently. In the reflection of the glass wall, Naomi caught her own image, calm, centered, untouchable. For years she had been the outsider in every room. Tonight the room was finally hers. Outside the Langford Gallery, the night had turned electric. News vans lined the curb camera crews, shouting into microphones under a skyline that suddenly seemed smaller. By midnight, every network in New York had the same headline. Black CEO takes control of billionaire dynasty. Langford empire collapses in real time. Clips from the live stream replayed on every screen. Eleanor's frozen face. Preston's pale confusion, Naomi's calm voice cutting through it all. For once the world didn't hear anger in a black woman's voice. They heard order. Inside the gallery, the lights had dimmed to aftermath. Security escorted the Langfords aside, not with violence but procedure. The irony burned deeper than any humiliation Naomi could have delivered herself. A young reporter trembling with adrenaline approached her. Doctor Ellis, can I ask you, did you plan to reveal it like this? Naomi looked at her eyes, calm. I didn't plan humiliation. I planned ownership. The girl blinked, stunned. What happens to them now? Naomi paused. They'll have to learn what accountability feels like. She turned away as her assistant approached, tablet glowing faint blue in her hand. Dr. Ellis, we're trending worldwide. Hashtag number the Ellis effect. Do you want us to release your statement? Naomi nodded once. Post it, as written. Within seconds, her words hit every platform. Power doesn't need volume, it needs integrity. We don't rise by humiliation, we rise by remembering who we are when they try to erase us. The internet roared back. Millions of shares, millions of voices repeating her name. Naomi Ellis wasn't just a CEO anymore. She was proof. Meanwhile, at Langford, headquarters downtown servers shut down in real time. Employees stood frozen as screens flickered, access denied. On the 42nd floor, a junior analyst whispered, she wasn't bluffing. By dawn, financial papers confirmed it. Ellis Global had executed a full takeover, months in motion, perfectly timed for exposure. The empire hadn't fallen overnight, it had fallen in plain sight. Back at the gallery, Naomi stepped outside into the cool morning air. The crowd was still there, reporters, photographers, strangers cheering quietly. One voice rose from the back. How did it feel being underestimated? Naomi smiled faintly. Necessary. A hush rolled through them, not out of fear but respect. She walked toward her waiting car, camera flashes following like tiny storms of light. And as the door closed behind her, the city exhaled the sound of a dynasty ending and a new one beginning. By sunrise, Naomi Ellis had become a headline, a symbol, and a controversy all at once. Every major outlet ran the footage, a black woman walking calmly through a sea of billionaires as their world collapsed around her. The caption under most of them read the same way, dignity under fire. Talk shows argued over it before breakfast. Some hosts called her a visionary. Others called it public humiliation disguised as justice. And across social media, the split deepened: praise, disbelief, anger, awe. But Naomi stayed silent. Her penthouse office overlooked the river, all glass and stillness. She didn't check her phone. She just watched the city breathe. In her reflection, she saw both the woman who built an empire and the girl who once stood outside a gallery window told she didn't belong inside. Her assistant Maya entered quietly. Doctor, Ellis's CNN is requesting an exclusive. They're offering prime time. Naomi turned from the window. Not yet. Let them talk first. Let them show what they really believe. Maya hesitated. They're also saying you humiliated the Langfords. Naomi's eyes softened. Not defensive, not angry, just sad. I didn't humiliate them, she said. I revealed them. The phone buzzed again, messages from investors, activists, world leaders. A text from an anonymous number read, "You just changed how every boardroom looks at us." Naomi closed her eyes briefly. Then maybe it was worth the noise. Later that afternoon, she appeared outside her building for the first time since the takeover. Reporters swarmed like tides. "Dr. Ellis, was this revenge? Do you regret making them look small? Are you the hero people say you are?" She stopped on the steps, turned to the cameras. Her voice was calm, sharp as glass in sunlight. "Revenge is personal. Accountability is structural," she said. "I didn't take anyone's dignity. I simply reclaimed mine. The difference is who gets to define it." For a moment, even the microphones went quiet. Then someone shouted, "What about the Langfords?" Naomi paused. "They'll have every opportunity to rebuild, just not on borrowed respect." That line hit the air like thunder, a truth too clean to argue with. That night, her interview aired on late-night television. Clips went viral instantly, her tone, her calm, the way she didn't blink when the host asked, "Do you believe this was justice?" Naomi smiled faintly. "I believe justice is when silence finally tells the truth." Millions watched. Some cried, some rolled their eyes, but no one could look away. In a small apartment in Atlanta, a young black law student whispered to her screen, "She did it." In London, a woman in her 50s replayed the clip and texted her daughter, "Now you see why I never stopped speaking softly." Naomi didn't read the comments, didn't track the views. She just sat in her office that night, lights low, city glittering below like a sea of small possibilities. Maya brought her tea. "It's everywhere now. They're calling it the quiet revolution." Naomi looked up. "Good. Let them call it whatever helps them listen." And with that, she turned off the screen, leaving only her reflections steady in the dark. It didn't take long. By the second morning, the Langfords began their counterattack. Headlines shifted tone overnight. Ellis Empire faces ethical questions. Langford's claim takeover was calculated ambush. Their PR machine roared back to life. Public sympathy, repackaged victimhood, repainted in designer grief. On breakfast television, Eleanor Langford appeared in soft lighting pearls replaced by modest silver. She looked tired but rehearsed. "We were blindsided," she told the interviewer, her voice trembling just enough. "We thought we were welcoming an investor, not an executioner." The host nodded solemnly, the cue cards doing their work. In the background, Preston sat stiffly beside her, jaw-tight eyes burning at the camera like it owed him something. "She embarrassed us in front of the world," he said flatly. "That wasn't justice. That was revenge." Clips of the interview flooded every feed, the narrative-bending sympathy bleeding from the uninformed. At Ellis Global HQ, Maya watched the broadcast from Naomi's office. "They're playing the victims now," she murmured. "Public perceptions shifting." Naomi didn't look up from her desk. "Good. It means they're scared." Maya frowned. "Should we respond?" Naomi closed her tablet. "No. We respond by continuing to build. Let noise destroy itself." But the noise grew louder. Talk shows debated her motives. Politicians weighed in. One anchor asked, "Did Naomi Ellis exploit race and gender for profit?" The clip went viral within hours. By noon, her investors called. Some wanted reassurance, others distance. "Perception risk," one of them said on the line. Naomi answered, "The only risk here is mistaking discomfort for danger." Still, the tension was real. Eleanor's team released a press statement accusing Ellis Global of predatory acquisition tactics and moral opportunism. They even hired a crisis management firm known for discrediting whistleblowers. Maya stormed into the room later that evening. "They're going after your record, your family, your charity work, everything." Naomi leaned back in her chair, calm as a storm before thunder. "Then they're already losing. When truth becomes the threat, exposure is just a countdown." Outside her office, the media frenzy pulsed like weather. Flashes, headlines, the hum of a society desperate to choose sides. But inside, Naomi drafted a single-page statement. No anger, no defense. Power is not what you take. It's what you hold when they try to take it back. She sent it to Maya with 3 words: schedule for dawn. That night, Eleanor Langford dined privately with a journalist rumored to be her ally. Cameras waited outside the restaurant, catching only silhouettes through glass. "She won the company," Eleanor whispered, "but she'll never win the narrative." What she didn't know, every word of that dinner was being recorded. Not by spies or rivals, but by the same journalist she thought she controlled. He'd grown tired of the lies. At 3:17 a.m., Naomi's statement went live. By 3:45, the leaked recording followed. By sunrise, the tide had turned again. The world watched in real time as the Langfords' attempt to rewrite history unraveled, not with scandal but with their own words. Naomi woke to sunlight streaking across her desk. Maya entered quietly, phone in hand. "They're finished," Naomi smiled faintly. "No," she said, "they're just finally visible." By sunrise, the world had a new soundtrack. Eleanor Langford's trembling voice caught mid-lie. Every outlet, every feed, every corner of the internet replayed the same line. She won the company, but she'll never win the narrative. And then the truth. Her full conversation recorded, unfiltered, cynical, cruel. "We'll paint her as unstable, as emotional. It always works." The clip spread faster than apology. Within hours, it had crossed oceans. Hashtags multiplied: number the truth speaks, number Naomi Ellis, number enough silence. On TikTok, creators dissected the power dynamics frame by frame. On Twitter, journalists called it the clearest example of systemic arrogance ever caught on tape. By noon, even late-night hosts were quoting Naomi's earlier line, "Power isn't what you take. It's what you hold when they try to take it back." The phrase became a rallying cry. At a university in Lagos, students projected Naomi's speech onto a campus wall. In London, women gathered outside the stock exchange holding signs that read, "Dignity is power." And in New York, right outside the Langford Gallery, people left lilies at the entrance, a silent tribute to a different kind of victory. Inside Ellis Global HQ, Maya scrolled through the trending feed, stunned. "Dr. Ellis, they're calling you the face of a movement." Naomi looked up from her screen. "That's dangerous." Maya blinked. "Why? Because movements outlive their makers. And I'm not done living yet." Still, the shift was undeniable. Major corporations issued statements on workplace discrimination. 3 CEOs resigned within 48 hours. Even the Langford board, what was left of it, announced a full internal audit to restore ethical balance. Naomi watched the press conference on mute. Eleanor looked smaller, paler, the confidence replaced by calculation. Preston sat beside her, avoiding the cameras entirely. Naomi whispered to herself, "They finally understand what exposure feels like." Later that evening, she received an invitation from the United Nations, a panel on leadership and equity. Maya grinned. "They want you as the keynote." Naomi shook her head. "I'll go, but not to speak, to listen." That night in her apartment, the city glittered below like a circuit board, alive, connected, unpredictable. She opened her laptop, scrolling through messages, thousands of letters from women students, entrepreneurs. Stories of being overlooked, dismissed, underestimated. One caught her eye, a 12-year-old girl from Detroit. "Miss Ellis, I saw your video. My teacher said I'm too quiet to lead. But you were quiet and they heard you anyway." Naomi read it twice, then smiled, the kind that carried both pride and ache. She typed back a single sentence: "Silence isn't weakness, it's focus." Outside, the world kept replaying her story, the fall, the twist, the calm. But Naomi knew the truth. She hadn't built a moment. She'd built a mirror, and now the world was finally looking into it. The United Nations auditorium was a glass cathedral, ceilings high enough to hold the weight of history, seats filled with people who shaped it. Naomi Ellis walked to the podium without notes, without entourage. Cameras tracked her every step. Some delegates rose, others crossed their arms. The moderator introduced her as the woman who redefined modern leadership. She didn't react. Titles had never interested her. Truth had. For a long moment, she said nothing. Just stood there, letting the silence spread, the same silence that had once cost her a seat at every table. Now it was the table. Finally, she spoke. "I didn't come here to be celebrated," she began. "I came because power unchecked becomes culture, and culture unexamined becomes inheritance." Her words landed like slow thunder. She looked out at the delegates, presidents, CEOs, activists, all watching a woman they'd once ignored. "I didn't destroy a dynasty," she continued. "I revealed what was already rotting inside it." A murmur rippled through the hall. The cameras caught the faintest trace of emotion in her eyes, not triumph, but something quieter. Responsibility. "I've been called ruthless," she said, "but I wasn't ruthless. I was precise. Precision is what happens when you've been denied the luxury of mistakes." Applause rose hesitant, then grew a wave rolling through the room. But Naomi raised her hand, gently silencing it. "I don't want your applause," she said. "I want your awareness. Because one day it won't be me standing here. It'll be someone who had to fight harder for longer with less. Behind her, a massive screen flickered with images, not of her victory, but of people around the world who'd spoken out since. Workers, students, whistleblowers, faces of every shade. Naomi turned toward the projection. That's the point. Justice isn't mine to own. It's ours to continue. When she stepped away from the podium, the room stood in silence, not out of obligation, but reverence. Even the air seemed to hold its breath. Outside, reporters waited for a headline. Inside, something deeper had shifted. For the first time in years, the conversation wasn't about Naomi Ellis or even the Langfords. It was about what kind of power the world wanted next. The applause from the UN had faded hours ago, but its echo still lingered in Naomi's chest, steady, heavy, unresolved. That night, she didn't go to a hotel or gala. She drove herself quietly to a small brownstone on the east side of the city. No press, no entourage, just her and the hum of streetlights against glass. It was the house she'd grown up in, the one her mother cleaned after long shifts where the windows still rattled in the winter wind. Naomi hadn't been back in 15 years. Inside, everything was smaller than memory. The wallpaper had faded. The air smelled faintly of dust and lemon oil. On the kitchen wall, still taped from decades ago, was a note in her mother's handwriting. "They'll overlook you until they can't." She traced the ink with her fingertips. That sentence had built an empire. And now, standing here, she finally understood it wasn't just warning, it was prophecy. Her phone buzzed. "Maya, we've received over 2 million messages of support. Do you want me to read a few?" Naomi typed back. "Not tonight." She set the phone down. The silence returned. Not the cold kind she once feared, but the full kind, the earned kind. Through the cracked living room window, she could see the skyline. All those towers she used to dream of touching, now she owned several of them. But tonight, none of it felt like victory. It felt like gravity. She poured tea into one of her mother's chipped cups and sat at the old table, the wood still scarred from her teenage notebooks. For the first time in months, she let herself breathe without purpose. No strategy, no headlines, just breath. She thought of the Langfords, not with hate, but with distance. They were part of a world that had built her cage. She had simply found the key and left the door open behind her. Her reflection in the window looked tired, older human, and she smiled, faint, fragile, real. Because power was never the goal. Peace was. She whispered into the quiet, "I'm home." The city outside didn't cheer, didn't know. It just pulsed alive and indifferent. But for Naomi Ellis, that was enough. Some stories end with applause. This one ended with stillness, the kind that means everything has finally been said. 6 months later, the world had moved on, but Naomi Ellis hadn't. The chaos had cooled the headlines, had shifted, yet her name still lingered like a quiet standard of possibility. She never returned to the Langford Gallery. Instead, she built something new, the Ellis Foundation for Equitable Leadership. Its headquarters wasn't a skyscraper. It was an old library she'd restored in Harlem, sunlight pouring through tall windows walls lined with donated books, not marble. Every week, young founders, artists, and students gathered there to learn from one another. No titles, no hierarchy. Naomi would walk among them unnoticed, at first blending into the crowd. No designer suit, no security detail, just presence. One afternoon, she watched a young woman at the podium trembling as she pitched an idea. Her voice cracked, the audience murmured, and Naomi recognized the moment, that flicker between doubt and defiance. After the session, she approached her quietly. "Don't rush to prove them wrong," Naomi said. "Outlast them instead." The girl stared wide-eyed. "Are you?" Naomi smiled. "Just someone who's been told no too many times." The girl laughed nervously. "Does it ever stop?" Naomi looked toward the window where sunlight hit her mother's old quote, now engraved on the glass. "They'll overlook you until they can't," she answered softly. "It doesn't stop. But you learn to walk through it like weather." Outside, a small crowd had gathered, tourists, journalists, students taking photos of the library's inscription, "Built on silence," sustained by integrity. Meanwhile, the Langford name had faded from business pages. Their estates were quiet now, their empire absorbed, repurposed. And while the world debated Naomi's legacy, saint, strategist, savior, she kept her focus on something simpler: sustainability. She launched grants for underrepresented founders, partnered with universities, and funded programs for young women in finance. Each press release ended the same way. "Our goal isn't to break systems. It's to rebuild them with different architects." One evening, as the foundation closed for the day, Maya joined her by the door. "They still call you the Silent Storm," she said, smiling. Naomi laughed quietly. Storms end. Change stays. They turned off the lights together, leaving the building bathed in the gold of the street lamps. No noise, no spectacle. Just the sound of footsteps leading toward a future she no longer had to chase. The city was softer at 3 a.m. From the rooftop of the old Harlem Library, Naomi Ellis could finally see it for what it was. Not a battlefield, not a scoreboard, but a constellation of second chances. She stood near the railing coat, drawn close eyes on the river. Each light on the water reminded her of a moment when someone had doubted her, silenced her, or mistaken her calm for weakness. Tonight the reflections shimmered like proof that stillness had always been her sharpest weapon. Below her, the foundation building slept. A few interns still worked inside their screens, glowing pale in the dark, building something she'd started, something that no longer needed her permission to continue. That was how she wanted it. The phone in her pocket vibrated once. A text from Maya, press requests piling up again. CNN, BBC, Le Monde. They all want the woman who redefined power. Approve, Naomi smiled, small knowing. She typed, decline. Let them tell their version. I already told mine. She slipped the phone away and breathed in the quiet. The air carried faint music from a passing car below. Something old, something soulful. Her mother used to hum that tune while washing dishes, saying, "The world won't always clap for you, baby. Sometimes it just stops fighting you." Naomi hadn't understood then. She did now. The horizon began to lighten, a thin line of amber slicing the dark. Dawn was coming, not triumphant, not loud, just inevitable. Maya appeared a few minutes later, wrapped in a long coat, holding 2 mugs of coffee. "You don't sleep much anymore," she said. Naomi chuckled. "Sleep feels too much like silence. I've had enough of that." They leaned on the railing together, watching the first light spill over the skyline. "It's strange," Maya said. "The world still argues about what you meant to do, destroy, expose, inspire." Naomi turned to her eyes, calm. "Let them argue. The noise is proof that something moved." Maya studied her for a moment. "So what now? What's left for you?" Naomi's gaze drifted toward the waking streets. Vendors, setting up taxis, honking the pulse of life, beginning again. "What's left?" she repeated softly. "To make sure this city produces 1,000 more of us people who don't need to shout to be heard." The wind swept across the roof, tugging at her hair. She looked out once more, whispering as if to the skyline itself. "They'll overlook you until they can't. And when they finally see you, don't gloat. Just stand." For a long time, neither woman spoke. Then Naomi turned toward the door. "I'm heading down," she said quietly. "We've got work to do." Maya smiled. "Always." Naomi took one last look at the city, her city now painted gold by the rising Sunday. It wasn't applause that filled the air. It was peace. She walked back inside, her footsteps steady, her shadow stretching across the old library floor like a promise still unfolding. As the door closed, the camera would linger, the sky brightening the city, awakening the sound of her mother's hum, returning faintly in the wind. "I don't need to record justice," her voice would echo softly. "I am what it looks like when it finally arrives." Fade out, the end of a story, and the quiet beginning of everything she stood for.